Welcome to Bright Talk. I'm Deb Calvert, and I appreciate you so much joining me today. I noticed that we have a wide variety of people and a wide variety of jobs of people who are represented in the sign-ups on this topic. So clearly there's a lot of interest in leadership and how it's different from management. I want to assure you that we'll cover all of that, and more importantly, we'll be talking about what this means in practical terms, how knowing the difference between leadership and management can be used in choosing what it is that you do to be more effective. Before we do that, let me just take a moment to properly introduce myself. As I said, I'm Deb Calvert. I'm the author of the bestseller, Discover Questions, Get You Connected, and of the award-winning blogs, Connect to Lead, Connect to Win, and Connect to Sell. Based on that sentence alone, you can tell that connections are really important to me. So I would be honored if you would connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Google+, wherever you hang out. My handle will be on screen along with my email address all throughout the presentation. My company is People First Productivity Solutions. We build organizational strength by putting people first. I work as an executive coach, a meeting facilitator, trainer, and consultant to help people improve their connections and to help organizations improve their people practices. Leadership development and supervisory skills are both important components of a people-first environment. In the past, I've been a corporate HR director, and I've worked with many HR, L&D, OD, and senior management professionals since opening my company in 2006. Today, my talk is based on hundreds of conversations with C-suite executives and senior HR executives about the importance of strong management and people leadership. For those of you who are new to Bright Talk, just let me point out a couple of important features. First, please be sure to notice the link called Attachments in the upper left corner of your screen. I've included several bonus resources for you there, and I'll tell you more about each one of those as we come to them. But I just mention it now because you'll want to access all you can before you leave the webinar today, or bookmark this link so you can come back and get these when you need them. Everything you see there is free to access. Second, you can subscribe to this channel, the Deb Calvert channel on Bright Talk, and if you do, you'll get more content every month from me. Bright Talk makes it so easy to stay on top of what's new and what's relevant for you. As I said, I offer a new webinar every month for HR and for managers about how to be more effective in leading people. Now, enough of that commercial stuff. Let's get back to the business at hand. You came to hear the differences between managing and leading, so let's jump right into that. I would like to start with a basic definition, but before I do, before we get to that simple definition, I'd like to ask you to try something. Just close your eyes and imagine the face of a person who you know who is a manager. Get that visual in mind, someone you know who is a manager. And now, eyes closed, I'd like you to do the same thing. I'd like you to imagine the face of someone you know who is a leader. And I'd invite you to ask yourself, did you think of the same person both times? Did you think of two different people? If you're like most of the people in the dozens and dozens of workshops we do every year where we raise this question, if you're like most people, you thought of two different people, which begs the question, should we be thinking of two different people as managers and leaders? Or should these both be the same person? Someone who manages is also someone who leads. I think that's really the aim, but let's go ahead and break it down first so that we can really see what it looks like separately before we try to bring it together. The word manage, that definition, comes from the word origin mano, which means hand. If you speak Spanish, you know that. So hand, handling. Managing means handling things. Handling suggests that it's already in your grasp. It's in your hands. It needs to be taken care of immediately. There's some urgency, some immediacy. You might think of managing as the tasks that come to you being like hot potatoes that you handle quickly or you get passed along as quickly as you can. That's how we move work forward in organizations every single day. The word lead comes from the word origin of leiden, which means to guide. Leading or guiding suggests that there's a journey or a destination with someone taking you to a new place, a place that isn't familiar, one where you've never been before. So clearly, we need both of these things to be happening in organizations. We need today's work to be handled today to get the results that we need. But we also need to be looking toward the future and having people who take us to places where we've never been before. We need both, but we need to be clear on these differences in order to get both. So I'm giving you now a definition of leadership that I really like. This comes from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner of the Leadership Challenge. That's an evidence-based framework of leadership that's been documented for over 30 years. They've been researching millions of leaders around the globe. But I like this definition because it helps make an important distinction. See, leaders, first of all, leadership it's an art. Management is more of a science. You do the same things each time, and as you replicate them, you get the same results. But in leadership, because it's a little bit more about the interpersonal connections, and it's more about guiding people to places where they personally haven't been before, that means there's going to have to be some flexibility. More importantly, it's going to be flexible based on the manager himself or herself. You, as a leader, will do things differently than I will as a leader. The next part of this definition I like is the verb choice, mobilizing others, mobilizing them. That means putting them into action. This isn't theory. This is behavioral. This is activity. This is movement, going someplace. And where are we going? Not just by ourselves, but with others. We're going toward something, an aspiration of the future, an ideal, unique state that is somewhere different from where we already are. And in the middle there, how are we going to get there? Well, we're going to get there because others have been mobilized and they believe so strongly that they will even want to struggle to reach that shared aspiration. That's what leaders do. And what managers do is in your job description. If you are a manager, those things in your job description, the tasks, the duties, the responsibilities, all that you do to get results today, that adds up to management. Now, there are 25 differences that I have put together for you, and in that attachment section that I referenced, you'll find a list of 25 differences. It's actually a really good tool if you want to self-assess or sort of think about for yourself, where do you spend your time, leading or managing. But I'm just going to cover 10, and they'll all add up to a single conclusion by the time that we're done here. But as we go through these 10 differences, please note that there's a reflection question. That's for you to think about. And it's not about any sort of a right, wrong, or a good, bad judgment. These are simply choices of managing or leading. I want to remind you that we do need both. There's nobility in the profession of management as well as in the choice of leadership. But I'd like you to be thinking about the contrast and how you can more often be stretching yourself into both places. Note, too, that leadership isn't a job title. So some who aren't managers can also do the work of leading. So it's important for everyone to understand what leadership looks like. Now, having said all that, let's cover our 10 differences. The first one is about perspective. Managers, by the very nature of the work they need to do, are typically looking more short-term, whereas leaders are looking out into the future. They've got a long-range perspective. And so for you, as you think about, are you spending more time managing or leading, what could you do to focus more on whichever one you don't do? Now, I'm going to go ahead and more often lean toward what could you do to lead more often, simply because that is a more universal opportunity. People don't have to have a job title or promotion to lead. But secondly, because in our day-to-day, if you think about your performance appraisal and what's expected of you, you're probably getting more signals and cues to manage as it is. If you are like most groups, most people I talk to and coach, leadership is the place where you would need to do the stretching. So I'm going to make that blanket assumption here, and if it doesn't apply quite to you, that's okay. You've got the other side to look at to balance out in managing. The second thing that makes the difference between managers and leaders is that managers must implement and follow rules and standards. Sometimes it takes leadership to challenge any of those rules or standards that are stale or that have become outdated, or to make courageous decisions to do what's right in service of company values, even when that might mean a policy change. This is a great illustration of where it's very important to have a balance. And the same people, you'd want to see the same face here, the people who are managing, the ones who are implementing and following the rules and standards, ideally would also be doing the right thing. And they would be basing their decisions on not just policy as it's written, but on values and standards and future outcomes that will come from their decisions. Third difference. We're going through these pretty quick because I want to sum them all up and be able to give you some additional information about what to do with all of this. Where do you get your power? How is it that you get things done? And if you can think of all the people you've ever known who you'd consider to have some degree of power, you'll notice that they come at it in one of two ways. It's either command and control, or it's heart and soul. Command and control is more of a management tactic. It means because I have the job title, you must do what I say. Versus somebody, whether it's by title or not, I've known lots of people who are leaders without ever having a higher position on the org chart. They get things done because they have influence. They are able to convince people, help people see why they should do something without having any sort of authority over them at all. And this is the difference between accessing have to and want to in individuals. See, we could make lots of people have to struggle because of fear or intimidation, but that's not leadership. That might not even be management, not the ideal kind of management. Or we can make people want to struggle for shared aspirations, and the want to piece comes from inside of them. That's more of an intrinsic motivator. Leaders access that. And they get that because they have connections with people. They've got something more than the position or the title. This one goes hand in hand with the short-term versus the long-term perspective. I think that this difference is one of the main reasons why there's confusion about what it even means to be a leader. See, so many people think leader, that only applies to the people who sit at the very top of the organization, the C-suite, for example. But that's not what it means to be a leader. Leadership is not a job title. The reason we're confused, though, is that so often the strategy gets set by the organization's senior managers, and so we associate this leadership activity with senior management roles. But nobody ever said that strategic thinking is only reserved for a few people. And in fact, if you're mired in tactics, if you're putting fires out all the time, if you find yourself constantly being reactive and feeling like you have to bounce from one thing to the next without ever being able to connect the dots, then you may need some strategic planning for whatever it is that's required of you to get accomplished. Strategic planning helps you to be more narrowly focused, to stay on task, to sort out what it is that does deserve your time and what it is that is more of a distraction. Lots of activity is simply tactical, and it doesn't advance you anywhere. Having a strategy helps you then develop the tactics to execute on that strategy. And if you've not developed a strategy, you should know that it actually comes from, first of all, getting really solid on your own core values and being able to find your own voice and knowing what it is that you stand for as a leader. And that's pretty heady work. It's not something that everyone knows how to do or even thinks about spending time and focus doing. If you are, however, in the military, let's say the U.S. Army, you will go to a class and you will learn all those things I just described and more so that you develop a personal leadership philosophy, a PLP. A personal leadership philosophy makes it so much easier for you to know when to say yes, when to say no, and how to have a values-based compass inside yourself to steer your decisions. If you have any interest in pursuing the creation of your own personal leadership philosophy, I've given you a link in the attachment section. It's a web page full of tools, a couple of sample PLPs, a step-by-step process for developing that for yourself, an article, and a guide to help you get all of that accomplished. And if you are, like most people who have done that activity, it takes about 3 months. Give yourself plenty of time because there's a lot of deep thinking that you'll be doing along the way. But if you're like most people who go all the way through that exercise, it will be transformative for you, especially for you as a leader. Now, the next difference here is one that may seem kind of obvious, but so often it gets forgotten. Leaders elevate. They elevate using strategy and also by engaging others. Before you can ever do that, though, you have to let go of the work that you might be hoarding because it's what you've always been rewarded for, or it's what you're being measured for as a manager. If you do all of that work yourself, you are depriving others of the opportunity to be developed, and you're depriving them of the opportunity to be inspired by your shared vision. They can't even know your shared vision if you don't have them involved in strategic planning, if they don't have a voice in crafting a vision for the future, if they don't even have the insight or the development of the work that you are doing, and they're just on the periphery. Now, please note, I'm not talking about doing anything here that's in conflict with company strategic plans or with the company vision. As a leader, though, whatever your role might be, you would just be more narrowly defining for yourself or for your team what that vision might be. To inspire a shared vision, that's what makes a leader effective in mobilizing others so that they will want to struggle because of those shared aspirations. Those are the purpose for the struggle. That's what makes the mundane, the day-to-day, special. It's what makes people feel excited about coming to work and hopeful about the future. Now, there is no vision of the ideal future that includes maintaining the status quo. That's just not inspiring. And while it's essential in some places, of course, that status quo, for that you need managers and you need management skills to maintain whatever it is that should not be changed. But inspiring people and pursuing excellence, that also requires leadership. Leadership seeks change. Leaders ask, what's new? What's next? And leaders help people see the future in ways that are exciting and ennobling to them. Based on your perceptions about change, you may be making decisions and choices that stem from your fears. So this is a caution. Be careful not to overdo it. Balance is really important so you won't become, on one extreme, a micromanager, someone who fears rebellion and anarchy, so you keep a tight lid on everything. Or at the other extreme, you also don't want to become a taskmaster who is exhausting people with a constant barrage of new ideas and new initiatives all the time. Your fear of inertia, if you're a leader, you're excited by change, you're seeking change all the time, you also have to remember that people can only move as fast as they can move. And you have to be able to enable them and equip them and build them before they can continually implement changes that you might be handing over to them. So think about those differences, think about what you fear, and you'll have some sense of where you're spending more of your time managing or leading. And then this next one, this might take a little bit of reflection. It's linked to what I said about command and control versus heart and soul. This is about the response that you want from employees. And certainly, there are appropriate places where compliance is critically important. I don't want to send any mixed messages or wrong information here. So let's be sure we dignify where compliance is important. We need managers, and that's valid work to be doing. No right, wrong, good, bad in anything that we're saying here. We want balance. Since we have good representation today here from HR field, HR professionals, I just want to point out a resource that I've attached for you. It's called HR Hacks, and that is a customizable tool. Basically, it takes all of the standard tools that you might need in HR, especially if you're a department of one or a small HR department, and it gives you a way to customize and download forms so that you have ready-made tools for compliance and other HR needs. But there are also appropriate measures that all supervisors should be taking to learn about employee commitment and to earn employee commitment. Leadership is linked to the emotional commitment of employees, and I don't want us to shy away from that word, so I want to say it again. Leadership is linked to the emotional commitment of employees. Emotional commitment builds when we interact with people. A transformational communication style does more than a one-way dissemination of information, which I'm calling transactional. Transformational communication is a two-way dialogue. It's an exchange of ideas. It's a collaboration where needs are uncovered and solutions are co-created. And emotional commitment also comes from inviting people in and investing in people as you do. You need managers to build the business. Managers build the business in many, many ways. Depending on the function of the manager, the work would not get done, the company would not be strong and healthy, the customers would not be satisfied, the day-to-day operations, the production of what you sell and manufacture, none of that would happen if you didn't have solid managers to build the business. And at the very same time, you need leaders to build the people. That's the long-range perspective. Building people is strategic. Building people is the only way to innovate and grow in a sustainable way. So there you have it. Those are the 10 ways I wanted to introduce first so that we could define the differences between leading and management. Let me repeat that we do need both. We need both leaders and managers, but these are not two distinctly different jobs. So please don't make the mistake of thinking it's only senior management at the top of the org chart who must do the work of guiding people to the future state. That's simply not true. And those are the company's senior managers thrust into a position where they are expected to lead merely by virtue of their position. But ideally, there's a vision that's been set for where you are going. And ideally, that vision isn't just the big V vision for the whole company, but by team and by work group, there's also a vision for where, as a smaller group, you're going in service of the company vision. And leaders enlist others in that vision in a way that mobilizes them to want to struggle. In the day-to-day, along the journey, the very same people manage the tasks and handle the situations that arise and constantly guide everybody who's a part of that journey. So it's a simultaneous function. So you really can't get to the other side. You can't get to the place you've envisioned going without doing the work that sustains and grows and propels the organization forward. And that's why, as Kouzes and Posner say, leadership is everybody's business. It's why you need your managers to be leaders. It's why you need leaders at every level. And it's why so many companies never go anywhere. They may be well managed, but when they lack leadership, they stall out. Without leadership, there's diminished emotional commitment, and that has dire consequences. See, it's the manager, the person that any one of us reports to, our direct manager. That's where this impact primarily occurs. The manager has certain activities and behaviors that they exhibit. And those activities and behaviors matter greatly if all of the manager activities are focused on the short-term compliance, today's results, continuity, transactional conversations, if all of that is what's happening in the day-to-day with a manager, then there will be low levels of employee commitment because it's just not inspiring. It's not personally meaningful or engaging. And there can be a loss of productivity and employee satisfaction that spins out and has other consequences going forward. Usually this is represented as employee engagement. Employee engagement, this is the simplest definition I know. It's the heightened emotional commitment, it's a connection that an employee feels for his or her organization, and because of that emotional connection, that's what influences the employee to apply additional discretionary effort to their work. And that's why all of this is worth discussing, because engagement, it's the enabler of any business strategy. Whatever your business strategy might be, all of your business strategies, every single one of them is better served when you have higher levels of employee engagement. Let me just walk you through how this works. So it starts with having employee engagement. Employee engagement is the heightened emotional connection that any employee feels toward the organization, and as we said, that's driven by the manager. So they feel this toward the organization, driven by the manager, and when they feel it, the more they will apply additional discretionary effort to their work. What that means, because of the emotional commitment, the connection, that means that you'll have higher retention levels, especially of your high potentials who you want to retain. And when you have higher levels of retention, of course, you reduce the expenses of recruitment, you build your bench strength, you have happier, more satisfied workplace because other people aren't picking up the slack when there are constantly chairs that are open. That's what happens with the emotional commitment, the connection. What happens, though, when you get the additional discretionary effort is that you get this. It's a domino effect. You end up getting higher levels of productivity, and this is true in every possible measure. Higher levels of productivity meaning more output, meaning higher levels of quality in the output, meaning fewer workers' comp claims, fewer safety incidents, higher productivity across the board when employees are more engaged. Not only that, because of that additional discretionary effort, it all plays out so that you have customers who are more satisfied, longer term, more loyal, and because of that, you will see more top-line revenue. The reduction in expenses plus the higher levels of top-line revenue add up so that you also get improved profit margins. And everything I'm describing here, by the way, is proven by a lot of backed-up research. I'll give you a little bit of it in just a moment, but there's an attachment that gives you even more of that. So if you like this sort of stuff, take a look for the attachment that's about the business case for leadership development, because when we look at this grid, it does beg the question, if I can get all of that from employee engagement, how is it then that I can get employee engagement? And the number one way, research-based, the one thing that drives employee engagement more than anything else is your leaders. The development of the people in your organization to be leaders at every level, not just at the top of the org chart, although it certainly doesn't hurt there, not just at the level of all managers and supervisors, but to think about even your emerging leaders, to think about developing people as leaders so that employee engagement will grow and you'll get this domino effect of all the benefits. See, engagement, it is not only the key to performance and a key to retention, it's the key to commitment, emotional commitment from employees. And when you have that high level of commitment, people are less likely to leave, and not only that, they're going to work harder and perform better. Let me put this another way. This comes from Gallup. It's the Impact of Engagement study, and these are some pretty impressive numbers, double digits across the board, whether you're looking for higher sales and profit, whether you'd like to have higher levels of customer loyalty, or whether you want to boost your productivity. You can get any of that, all of that, from employee engagement when you are working on leadership development. Not just management training. That matters too, and that gets the work done today. but also leadership development in tandem and in complement to what you're doing for your managers and supervisors. And remember that all this cascading, this domino effect, all of it started with emotional commitment. Emotional commitment is what drives effort. Emotional commitment is 4 times more valuable than a rational commitment. See, a rational commitment says, I'm going to work hard because I want to keep my job. An emotional commitment is, I want to work hard because I really care about the work we do here. I care about the people here. I feel like I belong. 4 times more valuable. We want this emotional commitment, and there are several ways that you can go at getting it. I want to give you a few here today that you can use to get started. I've given you a tool that's very popular, one of our best-loved tools that we have here at People First Productivity Solutions. It's the Daily Engagement Checklist. And the way it works is that you sign up, you download it, it's all free. And when you do, it's an online tool so that managers can pick and choose and get served up their own customized checklist of what they want to work on for a period of time to improve their daily habits. Those are all habits that are known and proven to bring up the level of employee engagement. So take that one and disseminate it far and wide to your managers. If you're looking to build your company's leadership, as I mentioned already, there's a document there with some of this research. It's the business case for leadership development. And I've also done a webinar on that topic alone. So if you want a 5-step process for walking the C-suite through the importance of leadership development, on this channel, just go ahead and find that webinar and call me if you need more information, but that's a great starting place. Finally, if you're someone here, maybe you're in the role of individual contributor or you don't see that there's going to be a company-wide effort, but you want to work on your own leadership, there's something here for you too. It's a self-paced training course, also free. It's called Emerging Leaders, but many people who have been in management roles for a long time in their career also find real value in this because it's focused on that leadership side. And it's just a series of emails. You're going to get 10 emails from me, and each one of them will have a little information about leadership, some things that you can do on your own to try new techniques, as well as some additional tools that come with each of those 10 pieces of leadership. The bottom line, though, is this. You have a role in driving employee engagement. Managers, if for all of you, HR and other functions too, for all of you who have a supervisory title, that emotional commitment you're looking for starts with your behaviors, the choices that you make. And your effectiveness as a manager, regardless of what your job description and your performance appraisal say, your real effectiveness comes from striking a balance between managing and leading, shifting so that you do more to encourage people, to develop people, to build people who will in turn build the company, to equip them for expanded roles and to help them see the future and then to enlist them in that vision of the future, and to communicate in a transformational way so that they feel a sense of belonging, and that fosters even more widespread emotional commitment. In other words, if you have direct reports, it's good to manage, and it's also critical to lead. In summarizing here, and I'm getting ready for your questions, so please feel free to post those for me because we have plenty of time. But in summarizing, let me just give you a couple more thoughts about the differences. Because to make the difference that you and your company and your team are looking for, to do that, you'd have to learn to lead, and then you have to liberate the leader that's already inside yourself. There's nothing about leadership that's mysterious. It's not something that you either are born with or can never access. That's just not true. Leadership is nothing more than a series of behavioral choices, and those choices are available to you just for the asking in any of the tools that I've provided, in any of the training that we offer here at People First Productivity Solutions, where we build organizational strength by putting people first. I'd like to answer a few of your questions. I'll answer all I can while we're here live, but I will also be answering them one-to-one. If I don't get to your question, or if you're someone who's attending on demand, I'll continue to monitor those questions and give you a personal response. So that's open for everyone. The first question that I have here is, we call them leaders at the top of our org chart. Are you saying they're not leaders? And yes, I might be saying that. It depends. I don't know them. I don't know those people at the top of your org chart. But I am here to say that that position, no matter what it is in title, does not make someone a leader. The behaviors and the results that people get is what makes them leaders. So I don't mean to offend anyone, but it could be a CEO, and certainly there are news stories out there we could point to. There are people who are CEOs. They've risen through the ranks. They've been very good managers in various capacities, and yet perhaps they've never really become leaders. Perhaps they have never really truly focused on the things on the right-hand side of that tool you're about to download, the 25 differences. They aren't leaders if they don't build the people, if they don't use a transformational communication style, if they don't work toward employee commitment, if they are not seeking change and looking for what's new, what's next, if they're not sharing a vision, if they're not thinking strategically, if they're not using personal influence, all these things we've talked about. If they're not doing the right thing, if they're not looking long range, then, they're not leaders, regardless of their position. I'll be so bold to say that. But, you know, if you're asking, you've probably already thought it before. The position on the org chart does not make someone a leader. It takes more than that. The next question is, could you say again where that definition came from? Yes, the definition I think you're probably referring to is the leadership definition. That comes from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. They wrote a book. In fact, it's now in its 6th edition. The book is called The Leadership Challenge, and that's an entire body of work based on over 30 years of research, evidence proving what the behaviors are of exemplary leaders, the ones who are the most effective in causing people to willingly choose to follow them. And it's a great resource, The Leadership Challenge. Be sure and check it out if you are interested in more. Any other questions? It's an open invitation. If you don't have one posted now, you're welcome to post one at any time or to be in touch with me directly, because you've got my email address there available for you. And I really do look forward to connecting with you. As we wrap up here today, I'd like to ask you one favor, and that is to please go ahead and drop some feedback to me. It could be a personal comment or a review. I'd like to know what's working for you and what's not, so I can adapt going forward. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope we are connected and that we continue this conversation in the future.